So hello and welcome. Happy Friday. Today is Friday, May the 8th of 2026. This is Backyard Beekeeping Questions and Answers, episode number 354. I'm Frederick Dunn, and this is The Way to Bee. So I'm really glad that you're here with me today. If you want to know what we're going to talk about, please look down in the video description below, and you'll see all the topics listed in order, as well as extra links for extra information. If you've got a question or a subject on your mind and you'd like me to consider that for a future episode, please go to my website, which is thewaytobee.org. Click on the page marked Contact, fill out the information, and there you go. Doesn't mean it'll make it, but that's the way to do it. So if you've got a question right now, you want to know what's going on, and you've got a condition or something you've seen, you want to share a picture or a video, people ask me that all the time, please go to the fellowship. Which fellowship? The Way to Bee Fellowship on Facebook. It's pretty easy to join as long as you don't act up. If you act up, you're gone. That's just the way it works. But all friendly people, 24/7, find out, make friends, make connections, and all that good stuff. And I know what else you want to know. Because I know things, because I can read your mind a little bit. You want to know what the weather's like outside? Well, it's not good. I can tell you that right now. It's 52 degrees Fahrenheit outside, which is 11 Celsius. Basically no wind. That's the good news. We've had rain, lots of it, including last night. The ground can't even absorb any more rain where I am. Speaking of which, I'm in the northeastern part of the United States, the northwestern part of the state of Pennsylvania. 65% relative humidity right now, so that's good. The bees are drying out to the best that they can. And here's the other thing coming up. What is going to be the best day for a swarm here in my neck of the woods? Might be different where you are, of course. Saturday, tomorrow, 63 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 17 Celsius. And then next Friday, a week from today, here in the northeastern U.S., 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 16 Celsius. Those are going to be some swarm potential days. Risk of swarming today, 70%, because it's sunny, but it's only in the 50s, as I just mentioned. And but when they're ready to go, they're ready to go. So what else can we talk about? I think that's it. We'll jump right in with the very first question, which comes from Chris from Spencerport, New York, which is also slant Rochester. Here's an observation from the other day that I thought was interesting. I have two hives. Hive 1 has been producing lots of drones for a few weeks. Hive 2 has had a few, if any, drones flying. So the thing is, this whole paragraph talks about why would drones come and go, and does it indicate really whether or not your colony has just swarmed? And it doesn't necessarily mean that, but I'll give you the breakdown. First of all, when you see drones, which are male honeybees, and the general population doesn't see them because you don't see them foraging. They don't do anything except hang around from beehive to beehive because they hop, skip, and jump and fly from one colony to another where they get fed. Drones can feed themselves, but they can't survive on that. They just can't. They're a high-performance motor. They need to get resources from nurse bees. So here's the thing. This time of year, you might look at a colony and see a whole bunch of drones on the landing board, and it seems like it happened all of a sudden. But what I want you to do is look at them and see what their behavior is. Because if these drones are hovering around the entrance, and there's a whole bunch of them all at once, and they seem to be zinging around back and forth, they do this less than workers, but they might be doing an orientation flight. They might not be taking off for good. So what's happened is, particularly early in the morning on a warm day, they're just flying out and testing their wings. They're giving themselves a shakedown cruise. So then the other thing is, and keep in mind, it takes a lot longer to produce a drone than it does to produce a worker. It takes 21 days from egg to adult to produce a worker honeybee. It takes 24 days to produce a drone. So they're expensive to produce. And this is why if you see them coming out of a hive, the hive can support the extra demand for food and resources to produce drones. So it means you got a healthy colony. The extreme other end of that would be little runty drones, barely making it, lots of dead ones on the landing board early in the morning, and that's a colony that has no queen, and likely, And the workers have just started laying eggs, and of course they're producing drones. By the time you see that, of course, remember, look at the time it takes to make one. The colony's been in trouble for a long time. This is why I want you to look into your hives, or at least assess the status of your queen within 21 days. So every 3 weeks, have a cycle where you're going to check in on your bees. Now the last, and it's my favorite because this is happening right now, we have colonies that are splitting, and what I mean by that is they're swarming, and some of you have already seen recent swarm videos from me. And so the ones that have key activities or interesting activities I'm posting this year, and on the thumbnail that I post, I'm putting the date, the time, the temperature, all the stuff that's related to log entries if you're tracking drones and splits and queens and everything else that goes with it. So what happens is, after your colony swarms, remember we have virgin queens coming out, sometimes the same day or within a day or two. Part of this question is, does that mean if you get a bunch of drones flying to a hive that they have new queens there? Generally it does mean that, but it doesn't mean the drones can smell that there's a new queen and they're coming kind of hanging out at the front door hoping that they hit dating age. Because what really happens is your virgin queen, the one that makes it, and sometimes this is where it gets complicated because there isn't always just one virgin queen coming out. And you've probably been told the story that the first queen to come out scoots around and chews a hole in the side of the other queen cells that are in the hive and kills them by stinging them through the side of their queen cells. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you get multiple virgin queens scooting around inside a hive at once. But let's say one of them finally gets to that age, and that age is up for grabs. But once the queen emerges from her cell, she has to finish maturing sexually. So the average is 7 to 9 days. So let's say you knew you had a swarm. That's your benchmark. And you knew the colony that they came out of. So mark your calendar. 7 to 9 days after that, you happen to walk out in your bee yard and you see a drone rush on your landing board. Lots of drones. There's so much noise it sounds like a swarm. But then when you get close, you realize it's not worker bees. They're not leaving. They're arriving. And then they're going to leave a couple of hours later. They kind of trickle out. So what they're doing is your queen has flown to a drone congregation area. She's been mated. And when she came back, the comet of drones followed her. Now, do you think the drones that followed her were mated, that they successfully mated with her? No, because the minute they mate with the queen, they lose a big part of their anatomy. They also pass out and they fall to the ground and they die soon. So if they're still chasing her, they're still capable of mating. But once she hits the landing board and gets in, that's it. No more chance for mating. So you know what they do? They all do a rush on that colony and they demand resources and they get fed and then they eventually leave. Those drones could be from all over the place. We don't even know. But that's what the classic drone rush is. And then so let's say you saw that. Make another note in your, I know you're going to keep really good books. So you're going to have a diary about what happens with your beehives. And so look those over, and a week from that date when you see the drone rush, check on the hive. I'll bet you see eggs and larvae in that hive. Check it out. And then write down in the comment section and just let me know that I was right and that I helped you out. And then now you know things you didn't know before. But those are the real reasons, the drone rush. And that's pretty much it. Question number 2, this comes from Julie from Dallas, Texas. Julie M, by the way. I picked up my nuke and a swarm. Nuke is short for nucleus, which means it's a complete colony. Queen, all the brood, everything is in it. It's established. You're not trying to set it up, but it's usually 5 frames. Picked up my nuke and a swarm of bees on May the 2nd. So cut a swarm. That's a colony out in the wild there. And then I hurried and installed them in their new permanent homes in the AM on May the 3rd. Because a cold front of stormy weather was coming in. Anyway, I quickly scanned for the queens, but did note capped brood larvae in various stages of growth. Each hive has 5 frames, which include brood, nectar, and some honey, along with 5 brand new wax-dipped frames. I watch from afar and am noticing foragers bringing back pollen So with this observation, I'm assuming everything is fine. I'm trying to patiently wait until May 16th to open both hives to monitor the goings-on in each hive and hopefully spot my queens. Am I doing and proceeding the right way? So when you've established, now this was a little vague for me because the mention is caught a swarm and a nucleus hive, but then described, brood in all stages of development. If you have a swarm, they have nothing. So the swarm has nurse bees with it. They have bees of all ages that were flight capable. And then, of course, they have a queen with them, and they're easy to set up a new colony. But now we're talking about foundationless frames and things like that. So, but the nucleus hive has a good start, and dropping them into 10-frame boxes right off the start is fine. That's what I've done for years and years. I only started using 5-frame nucleus resource hives within the past few years. So putting them right in the final hive configuration, centering them up, and keeping all of those brood frames in the same order that they are in the boxes that you receive them in. Because I think what we're talking about here with Julie is 2 actual nucleus hives based on the description. So, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but you just want to keep feeding them. But you're right to check in on them after a week. But when you see pollen coming in line with what other beekeepers are seeing with their hives, then I think everything is probably okay. But we don't want to stress them out right off the bat. And when you do look in there, do we have to look for the queen? Do we have to find the queen? No, you can just look and see that there are eggs and larvae, that production is still good, and there's no reason that it wouldn't be with a nucleus colony. So expanding them out to the 10 frame, centering your current frames is just fine. Question number 3 comes from John from Annapolis, Maryland. It says, I use the BeSmart insulated telescoping cover and the insulated inner cover. Is this overkill? Mid-Atlantic region, Annapolis, Maryland. No, it's not overkill. So here's the thing. When you have insulation on top of your hive, and I just want to get this across to a lot of backyard beekeepers, I hear a lot of people saying that as soon as, the warm weather gets here, they're going to swap out their hive covers and things like that. They're going to start venting and doing all these different things. And what I would like to get across to you is that keeping insulation on top of your hive, there's no such thing as overkill. If you haven't already purchased that, and of course you're considering alternatives maybe, but since you already have it, BeSmart Designs insulated inner cover, very good. I do use foil tape to close up the upper vent entrance and things like that. It's a great feeder shim. It's a feeder shim base. Because now we have to put a medium super around it or a shallow. Because we have to make space for that to be utilized for dry or liquid feed, whatever might be necessary to save a colony someday, you don't know. And then on top of that, to have another insulated cover above that, overkill? No way. Definitely leave that on there. Keep that configuration. And BeSmart Designs has themselves what's called the Duo, which is the BeSmart Designs insulated inner cover, and then the BeSmart Designs plastic. It's a double layer plastic over cover that has drip edges and stuff like that. I've done videos on that years ago. So having that, or even substituting a BMAX insulated cover or a Lysin polystyrene cover, perfectly fine. You do have to paint those. You don't have to paint the gear that comes from BeSmart. So that's pretty much it for that. But yeah, I would keep it. Keep your insulation on summer, winter, all the same. Unless you've got something that wraps around the hive that is not going to hold up to years of ultraviolet exposure. And by the way, when it comes to the plastics from BeSmart, I've had them out in my apiary since they've been around as a company. And they look a little grungy, but they haven't broken down and, become brittle, so that when you try to strap down plastic or something, it cracks or it just doesn't hold up to the years of exposure to ultraviolet. That's one company that it has held up. So just tossing that out there too, food for thought. Question number 4 comes from Callie Pete. I've heard a few beekeepers say that they prefer some defensive behavior in their area because of the yellow jackets that attack their bees. They say that bees with more defensive behavior tend to go after the yellow jackets more. Obviously, any hive like the one you showcase here is off the table. But I do wonder if some defensive behavior is good or not. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, so this is a comment that was left underneath my Africanized honeybees attack. Why do they do that? So if you've never, a lot of people write and say, I think I have Africanized bees. They're just after me all the time. And then when it gets down to the nitty gritty, well, how many bees are attacking you? It's like they're just all over me. It's like 7 of them. Okay, that is not an Africanized honeybee attack. Those are just cranky bees. A true Africanized honeybee attack, in a lot of cases, you can't even see through your veil. They go, and in the case of this particular video, they killed chickens. Killed chickens. Think about that. All the feathers and everything else. One of the chickens had so many bees on it, you could only see the feet, according to the owner. And the owners are beekeepers also. It was overwhelming. So they also attack their hogs and livestock. And you can make, observations about that, whether or not livestock should be in close proximity to honeybees and things like that. I wouldn't have fainting goats next to my beehives, because if they get stung and they faint, they fall over, they can't run away. The bees just keep stinging them and they just keep fainting. So, which is not a true faint anyway, it's myotonia. They just stiffen up because they're trying to run away and they can't. But you have to consider livestock. You have to consider the temperament of your bees. Now, this discussion seems to be fairly polarizing. So I just want to explain what I personally would do when it comes to honeybees that are hot. If they're dangerous at all, I don't consider that this is going to be a huge factor in their ability to defend themselves against yellow jacket wasps. A lot of the really defensive colonies, or flat out aggressive colonies of bees, are also very small colonies. And it's because they reproduce so quickly. They also swarm a lot and they usurp other colonies. So what that means is a swarm of Africanized bees on the move can move right into a colony. They don't even care if it's queen right or not. They move right in, kill the queen if there is one, and then they take over the colony of bees. They're the only genetic line that even does that I know of. So do we want them in exchange for their ability to fight off yellow jacket wasps? No, I don't personally. I don't want them. The one time, FedEx, Amazon, whoever has to come up to your property to drop off a package or deliver something, you're going to hate your life if something happens to someone or a pet that's really important to someone, and it's because of the genetics of the bees that you decide to keep. Honeybees kill people. They certainly can. And so one of the parts in breeding selection, one of the things I would look for would be temperament. Because I have pretty laid back bees, and I don't see them being wiped out by yellow jackets. Smaller colonies have a tougher time. And the yellow jackets, remember, peak near the end of the year because they're going to spend all summer building their nests and building up their populations. This is why at the end of the year, that's when you start getting all these calls. I have honeybees in my yard, come get them, and they're bald-faced hornets. And so, or aerial yellow jackets, which I've done a lot of work with, and I like them. I don't mean I like them. I mean, I like them because of their dynamic and how defensive they get and how interesting their annual cycle is. And so we've learned a lot about them. But this is why they show up in great numbers at the end of the year. They're trying to rob out your colonies and get the resources. So this is where you, as the beekeeper, rather than getting hot stock, how about reducing the entrance on your hive at the right time of year? Because that's part of the problem. Near the end of the year, when the temperatures get cooler and your bees aren't flying yet, the yellow jackets fly colder and access your hive while the bees are still in cluster because it's cold. So there are a lot of things that you can do aside from trying to get hot genetics. To me, the trade-off is not even remotely worth it. So, and, if you're one of the people that decides to keep, Africanized bees or highly defensive bees, you do that at your own risk. There's enough evidence that they really hurt people, that people lose their lives. And I don't want to be the one responsible for keeping those genetics around. So moving on to question number 5. This comes from Roger. It says, this is about the Apisolis. Roger was having problems. If you don't know what Apisolis is, it is the vape system that is for using to calm your bees instead of smoke. Some people have a hard time with smoke, and we like the switchgrass pellets, which by the way I just used yesterday. You light them and they burned all night. I forgot about the smoker out there. Switchgrass pellets burn all night. You want to find out about those? Go down in the video description, look for the link. You can support a nonprofit where we teach about bees. Best smoker pellets everywhere. Now, off the smoker pellet thing. Let's say you're using the Apisolis. So Roger, who used Apisolis, had a defensive colony of bees, did not react to it. So in other words, use that vaping system and it did not get those bees under control. And then there are a lot of questions about, putting the coil in and all the other things, the bits and pieces that come with it. So the reason I wanted to bring this up, this question for today's Q&A is just to let you know I'm going to create a standalone video for that, because I asked Roger if he's using the new formula that they came out with, which is supposed to be more effective against your defensive colonies. And because I don't have a super defensive colony right now, I can't even test that out. But I am going to go over the Apisolis, so we're going to revisit that and the new formula. And if you've been using those, let us know how you do it. And if you've got the new formula, is it working just as well as smoked? Now, I make a guess about that because I got that formula when it first came out. And it seemed to, in fact, it was so good that I did not light my smoker for the whole second half of last year. And so that's it. You turn it on, you vape, you turn it off, you put it away. There's no catching anything on fire. I don't know if you've seen Cayman Reynolds' video maybe a month ago where he burned up his bee suit. But that was not the smoker itself. I believe it was his igniter. So there are areas that you're not even allowed to have a lit smoker to work your bees. There are countries in the world that are like that. And there are parts of this country when summer gets here, they're going to be so hot and there are going to be fire bans and things like that. You don't want to be that beekeeper that starts a fire in the back of your pickup or in your bee yard and sets, because some people finish with their pellets or with whatever your smoker fuel is, and at the end of it, you have to put your smoker away. So I like to put a cork in it because you can save those pellets for a long time and just keep getting use out of them. Some people dump it out on the ground and they think it's done. But then the wind picks up and those little embers start again and you can start a fire. So we can eliminate all of that with something like a vape system. I know there are other companies making vape systems too, where they're still trying to perfect the fuel for it and things like that. So it's an area of interest because we don't want to set things on fire, we don't want to burn things up. And if you're working with young kids, as I am with my grandson, I'm not handing him a smoker that has a fire in it. He has to use the Apisolis system. But he really likes it because it makes vape and it looks cool and it doesn't make you cough. So it's not bad for your health. So we're going to go with that. There's another video that's going to come out on that, but I believe the new formula does work. I just don't have hostile bees to test it on. So I'd like to hear from you if you did try that out, how that went. Question number 6 comes from Dallin. D8 bees. I don't even know what that means. D8 bees get any food value for black mold. Has anyone tested it? Does it hurt bees at all? Bees don't react to things the way people do. Black mold might have lots of different kinds of mold that makes it black. Or there might be more than one kind of mold that is black. So all this discussion comes in response to the interview I did with Adam Strickland regarding the bleach in sugar syrup and what that did. But one of the big things that was described was that it knocks out black mold in your sugar syrup dispensers, containers, and feeders. So the question is the black mold really that bad? Well, it is. So I'll just give you the short line of it. I always say fail safe. And you don't have the means, nor do I, to look at black mold and know exactly what the strain is. So what I do is make sure I don't have any. So I've done that thing where I did the backyard test where I put sugar syrup 1-to-1 and then of course did all the additives in it. Honeybee Healthy, Beekeeper's Choice, bleach, Hive Alive syrup, all of these things plus the control, which is nothing but sugar syrup, 1-to-1. So that's 1 part sugar, 1 part water, of course. The thing of it is, once the black mold, and it always starts showing up at the upper edge where the water meets air. And once black mold shows up, it should not be in your bee feeders at all. So I did look some things up, just vaguely, and often species within the genus Aspergillus and other fungal contaminants in sugar syrup or hive stores negatively impact honeybee health. While bees can often neutralize low concentrations of fungal metabolites, higher levels or specific pathogenic species pose significant risks to both individual bees and colony productivity. So there are studies. I'm going to let you search for those yourself. I recommend you go to Google Scholar. And then once you get to Google Scholar, you're looking at published peer-reviewed papers and things like that. So it's scientific sources. These are not just anecdotal. So now you can find out impact of black mold in sugar syrup or feeds on honeybee health. And then you'll find out there's a lot of publications on that, not even marginal. So the idea that we might be able to get something beneficial from black mold is not good. So that's a solid no on that. Question number 7 comes from Scott in Zug, Switzerland. I hope I said that right. So I built my own double top bar hive, which is big enough to house 2 colonies. One at either end. Both entrances are on the same side of the hive, facing south. I have put a swarm colony in it 1 week last week. As I was watching them fly in and out of the hive, I realized that I've put the entrances on the long side of the hive, which means it has a cold opening. What are your thoughts or opinions on cold or warm openings? Just wondering if I should close the holes with some corks and drill a hole at the end so that it turns into a warm opening. So this isn't the first time this has come up, so I know that there's beekeepers out there arguing over cold and warm opening, and some of you are sitting there with question marks over your heads going, what's a warm and cold opening? Well, let's say I had a frame. Now, normally in your Langstroth beehive, Langstroth was an above average individual. You have the end of your frames, and this is the front of your hive, and then there's an entrance here. And when the air comes in, it can go right between these frames, and the bees can draw air up throughout the hive any way they like. That is considered the cold opening. Let's talk about the warm opening. It would be the equivalent of taking a Langstroth hive and putting the entrance to the side so that when the air comes blasting in, what does it do? It hits this face of this frame. So it hits that comb and doesn't just blow freely into the hive. So now some of the arguments are, well, now see, the queen can build everything she wants on the back side of that, blah, blah, blah. The bees control the air better and everything else. Do not, this is for Scott, do not re-drill the holes. You have a south-facing entrance. That's a warm opening, in my opinion. So I wouldn't change it. So I do see people, and for the reasons just described, that put it on the end of the hive, especially with long hives and things like that. Long Langstroth, top bar, Layens hives. Take a look at the Layens hives that come from Dr. Leo Sharashkin. Those are cold openings. Those entrances face the end of those frames. So one of the things I like to do to settle arguments or disputes or discussions, which should go on, by the way, I welcome criticism, discussions, constructive criticism. Anyway, what do the bees do when we're not doing anything? Let's quote Dr. Thomas Seeley. What do the bees do if we were doing nothing at all? So you look at cavities and spaces that your bees occupy and the holes that they went through and how they oriented the comb inside, because that tells us what they would do left to themselves. And see, I would reference people like Randy McCaffrey, who's Dirt Rooster, or Mr. Ed, Jeff Orchoff, but it doesn't apply here because they're not cold weather people, see. They don't have the challenges that we do, that our bees do up here in the northeastern United States. So guess what the bees show us? They show us it doesn't matter, they don't care. So it's kind of equal. Like the kids were saying months ago, 6, 7. Made no difference, either or. And so that's it. Face your entrances to the south, to southeast. That makes a difference. So there you go. And do not face your entrances towards, because I said south to southeast, because prevailing winds where I live come out of the west. So we don't want any of our entrances facing predominantly prevailing winds so that they would be coming and jamming right into your hive. That's much more valuable than the orientation of the frames inside the hive. So there you go. Takes care of that. Question number 8 comes from Sue S. from northern Indiana. Says, I had a swarm come into one of my hives on April the 24th, and when I set up the hive to catch a swarm, only had one of the frames that had some old brood comb on it. All the others were completely empty. All frames are foundationless and only have a wooden strip at the top. So the main question is, how long should I wait after the swarm arrived before opening the hive to give them some frames that had some comb drawn from a previous hive? These are also foundationless. I don't want to disturb them too early and risk an abscond. So one of the things not mentioned by Sue, did you take beeswax and rub the frame? So this has, clearly it has foundation in it. But if you had just this back wall here, or the back bar, the top bar, I run a line of beeswax right across the center of that. Usually it's grooved so that you can put a foundation in it. Putting foundation in is a big boost for your bees. But now guess what we have? This is something I like to use swarms for. So we're right on cue with this. I got beeswax on there. We're right on cue because once you put a swarm in there, they're dying to build comb. I just had a bunch of bees in an everything bee vac, and the everything bee vac has chicken wire in it. The chicken wire is there so the bees can hang on it. I have honeycomb inside that bee vac that's this big. One bit of comb that is shaped a little bit like Florida. Florida, we're fatter at the top. So they did that right away, 24 hours. So that lets us know they're ready to build comb for you. So if you can align them correctly, get all your frames in there, and feed them sugar syrup out the wazoo, 1 to 1, 1 part sugar, 1 part water. Let them build out that brood box. Keep it coming, because they'll keep building while the resources are there. If there's a hiccup, if there's a supply shortage, they'll stop work, and you're not going to get them back very easily. So I use them for comb building. Keep it going. Now, if you want to, a week out, you're going to check their progress. And if you see that they're really building everything out really well, there's no reason to put other stuff in there. So if they're not building it out, so at the end of the week, to answer the question for Sue, that's when I would put in the frames that have drawn comb on them after the fact. Part of the things too, though, if you're setting up a swarm trap or using a hive to collect your swarms, try to outfit it the way you ultimately want it to be. So in other words, don't try to put frames in there just to see if you can catch a swarm. And then when a swarm moves in, go, yeah, I got the swarm. Now I'm going to rearrange the furniture. It's harder once they've moved in. It's not impossible, but it's better to just set it up right the first time. Or let them build beeswax, which is what I like to do, which is what they're doing right now. Life is good. In fact, update on my Beersville bees, long Langstroth hive. They are going great guns in there, and if you think for 1 minute I didn't fill up that rapid round sugar syrup container that came with it, I did. And I'm going to keep that filled, and I'm going to keep them building it up because they're building all new comb for me in there. And they're just doing fantastic. They haven't even, I think it's been a week. Good stuff. Put them to work for you. Now, if you're a purist and you don't want to use sugar syrup at all, then you're just going to have to wait for the nectar resources to come in from the outside. That's it. And then you probably don't like foundation either. So you just wait and see what they build, and they build what they build. And then same thing. After several days, put in the frames that you already have in storage. So anyway, question number 9 comes from Brian Bennett, 4374. It says, thanks, Fred. Always enjoy your videos. When do you plan on doing splits? I'm doing splits right now. And that's because the bees are going to get away from me. Here's the game. The weather's been bad. Temperature's been cold. Foraging days are limited. The trees are full of blossoms, as you might have seen in the opening today. And the bees just can't get out to access everything. So we think in our heads that, yeah, they're just not gonna overload things. Well, here's what I had to do. I have to go to the zoo tomorrow. And so we're going to be at the zoo, and they wanted bees there. So that I had to load up an observation hive. Not like this one frame observation hive over here. I needed it to handle cooler temps. So it's the one that has the 5-frame space on the bottom and the single frame on the top. Now, you can't wait until the morning that you're going to go somewhere to show people these live bees. You have to set it up ahead of time, so that's what I was doing yesterday. So the reason I'm talking about this is how do I decide which colony I want to mess up to make a split and create this observation hive colony, which, by the way, is never going to be put back with the colony I took it away from, and I'll explain why. So I look at the ones that are really busy. They've got, in fact, they look like they might be getting ready for swarming. There might be a lot of orientation flights happening. So when we open that one up, and this was the particular Nucleus Hive, 3 talls, that's 15 deep frames, twice last winter. It fell off its hive stand and fell apart. Didn't just, lay in the snow. Laid in the snow in 3 distinct segments with snow, wind, sleet, and everything blowing directly into those frames. Now that's a write-off. You're just like, yeah, they're not going to make it, but I'm going to put them together anyway because I'm an above-average beekeeper, and I'm going to put them on their stand again. And I put 3 bricks on top this time. And within 2 weeks, another storm came through, did the exact same thing. And we looked at the upper apiary, not the lower apiary, so we didn't even know that it had blown off again. It was apart again, and we had like 4 hours of rain in the high 30s. Really cold. And so you go out there at the end of the day, like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and there they are again with a middle box, wall-to-wall bees, just soaking wet. You talk about something that would destroy a colony of bees. Put them back together, put them back up. This time, shipping strap. So now I strapped it down, which, by the way, is what I should have done in the first place. These Nucleus hives are narrow and tall. They present a broad surface to the wind. You just don't anticipate a wind gust coming through that peaks out at 70 miles an hour. That is a powerful wind gust. So, long story short, yesterday I go to that same hive. They are wall-to-wall bees. I open it up. I find 7 queen cells. They're halfway done. They're little half peanuts, right? Which means they're going to swarm. So I need to create an observation hive for the zoo. What do I do? Now I don't want to brag because I'm painfully modest overall. Second frame I pulled up had the queen on it with a bunch of brood, mostly capped. And I put her right in the top of that observation hive, which is where the queen goes. And then underneath of that is a queen excluder, and then I'll put 4 frames below and a feeder frame. So put that all together, found all these bees and all of these queens and all these cells. Every level was full of bees. So they need a split because I don't expand nucleus slant resource hives beyond 3 high. So 15 frames is the max. So I took them all apart, and of course I took all their nurse bees. See, shook them off into my observation hive because last night it got down into the 30s again, and they're out there in their observation hive, which is a 5-frame nucleus hive. So anyway, went out this morning, they're all doing fantastic, but so splits, when would I do them? Now. Yesterday. In fact, I'm a little late. But how I decide to split a colony is based on what I find when I'm looking at it. If they have started queen cells, they're on their way. If you come across the queen, she is about to leave. So you might as well collect her with a few frames of brood, decongest that colony, make another colony, establish an insurance policy if you need it, and then if they don't succeed, which that colony, just based on their performance last winter, I don't know what it takes to take them out. The insulation on that hive was negligible. In fact, the storm was so bad it blew apart their lid. And the lid was, that 2-inch pink rigid foam board that's all glued together. So of course when it blew over, it broke apart and the bits and pieces were everywhere. I don't know who built that thing, but it was not put together very well. So moving on, it has a new pink polystyrene cover, and it has a feeder on top, which is the Apisolis single nucleus feeder, which really isn't even, the little flange part isn't wide enough, so you have to tape it in place. But anyway, that's a good split. So right now is the time. And if you split now, think about it, the entire summer is ahead. The clover isn't even blooming yet. So when the clover kicks in, that's when anything that's going to produce a surplus, any colony that is going to give me honey to harvest. And the supervisor, and yes, his hive is doing fantastic. Now he went around and put his name on a bunch of beehives that just happened to be really heavily populated, but I don't think he even remembers which ones those were. But it's going to be time to super also. So splitting, supering kind of happens in concert, because when you're opening up your hive and you're looking to see if there are queen cells and things like that, what the population is before you expand the hive, that's when you're going to do splits. And you can do something called super splitting. Where does that come from? Well, I came up with it. Super split. It just sounds good. You go around your apiary, bring your hive butler tote with you, put the lid on, and you pull a frame or two of brood out of each colony you come across that's borderline full. And by the end of your walking around, you've got 10 individual frames from 10 separate colonies in theory. And then so now we've got a super colony. That thing is going to be stronger than the colonies that you took it away from. And so you're going to get a honey surplus. So that gets a queen excluder on top of it right away, and then your honey supers right away. And of course, you picked a queen and brought her with that. Once you have a queen, you don't need other queens from other colonies. You just need to steal some of their brood to decongest it a little bit, to hold them back. Because keep in mind, I'm not a honey producer, even though the supervisor is trying to press me in that direction heavily. Something about things that rhyme with honey. What is it? Money? I don't know. But he seems to want that as a 10-year-old, apparently. His client base is putting pressure on him, too. So splits are now in the northeastern part of the United States. But any part of the world where you are, where you've got a nectar flow that's going to continue, and you're looking at your colonies, and they're at max, numbers, and, the frames are maxing out with capped brood in this case, which is what I'm seeing everywhere. This means, as I mentioned before, that even while it's rainy, stormy, and crappy outside, your bees are building the populations off the chart, and they're ready for the next swarm, which is going to happen, that I talked about in the beginning here. It's going to happen either, what did I say, today and next Friday, or tomorrow, Saturday, and then next Friday, swarm days. Be ready for it. You can split them ahead of time and then be able to relax and stay inside while it's raining out. I'm starting to rethink whether or not we should actually work the beehives if you really need them. If you really have to head off swarming, you're going to have to set up some kind of tent or something and get out there when it's raining but warm, so you can still work your bees and expect them to be cranky. Bees do not like it when you visit them on a cloudy day, a windy day, a day that's not sunny and nice. They don't want to see you. And it's an all open, by the way, let's talk a little bit about long or horizontal hives. When you get into a Langstroth hive, when you pull the cover off and you pull that top super off, you went from bees in the dark, sheltered and protected, to 100% open, exposed, and unprotected. If ever there was a time that your bees were going to want to defend themselves, it's that. So, you have some choices, ways to calm them down. We've talked about it in the past, but I'll mention it again. Cotton duck canvas. Make it about twice the size, twice the width of the hive when you open it, and just drop it over the whole thing. They calm down. And then what you can do is roll it back and look at each individual frame, and then cover the areas that you're no longer working or looking at. This is easier with these long Langstroth hives. My cover boards on my long Langstroth hives are 4 inches wide. So that as I go through it, when I decide which area I want to look at, we pull those cover boards, but the other cover boards are on, and so your bees are not stressing out. This is why I like the Hive Butler totes. When you're pulling, if you really have to manipulate things, you're going to pull frames out and set them aside the way I do for the Super Split. And while they're in that container, look at that, the wind isn't blowing through it. You talk about your cold entrances and stuff like that. When they sit in that tote, they quiet right down. And then you put other frames right adjacent to each other, keeping them in the same order that they are with the hive that you're working on. Maybe you have to replace an old deep box or something on your hive. And what do you do with all the frames while you're doing that? Well, you can set up the new box next to your old box and transfer them one by one. And remember, the bottom is open and the air is blowing through it, and your bees are pretty darn upset, and you might be moving brood and things like that, or if you put them in a sheltered location like a Hive Butler tote, then they're much more calm and they're protected. And if you set that tote right on the ground, those frames are not in contact with the ground. So it just calms the whole thing. In other words, you're not going to come back in an hour and the bees sing out and get you because you messed up their lives. So the horizontal hives are cool. The top bar hive, I might as well mention that while I'm here. The Be Mindful top bar hive went through its first winter here. No additional insulation, anything like that. And it swarmed on me. See, we always say, they swarmed on me. No, they're reproducing. They're doing what they're supposed to do as a superorganism. It's their job. They need to make more bees. If they didn't do that on their own, then they wouldn't be making it, because they make way more bees than they need. So they swarmed on me, so I'm late, I'm behind, because you know what I'm doing? I keep waiting for better weather and it doesn't come. So what do? They just go ahead of us, and I collected the swarm, by the way. I got them. They're mine. But I was very surprised to see the top bar hive do that. They have 17 frames, 17 top bars. They're not frames. But that's it. Next, number 11 comes from Michael Moore. Thanks again for the great content. How far away from my apiary should I set up a robbing station or a feeding station? Set up as far as you can. Still in your property, in the clear where you can see it. We talked about the robbing station last week also. We have frames out there right now. What we did is a crush and strain from some leftover honey from the wintertime. And then we put it out at the robbing station. Actually, my wife did. She did a great job. She cleaned a dead out for me yesterday, which makes her my best friend on earth. And we hang it out. It's beneficial if it can be upwind of your apiary so that your bees are the ones to smell those resources first and go after them. There are bumblebees and honeybees. There's mason bees. Everything is after those. But you just don't want it directly next to your bees or your beehive, because what happens is wherever you set up your feeding and slant robbing station, the bees that go to it memorize it right away. These are foragers. Keep in mind, here where we are, it's been rainy and everything else. What's going on at the same time? The bees are kicking in with large brood, which puts honey in high demand for those bees to keep themselves going. So they're really intense when they come after resources like that. I like it because they clean up the frame. If you want a frame not to be sticky at all, let your bees go out there and clean it up. It's amazing. And then what happens though is if you have that right next to your beehives or right in your apiary, and I've seen some people, huge mistake, set up a robbing station right on top of the beehive. They're like, I want these frames cleaned up. Where'd you put them? Right on top of the hive so I can just remember which hive it came from so I can put it back. No, don't do that. When the resource is gone, they have lost all logic. They hurl themselves at that spot, and anything that has any sweetener on it, they just go after it. And you can have robbing this time of year. So we really need to, if you're going to have a feeding station, make sure it's well away from your apiary and where your bees can go get it. And then it should be in the same spot, because these foragers check it out first, and if it's empty, they scan the area and they go on to their happy way. But they definitely intensely probe and evaluate everything that's adjacent to where the feeding station is. Don't let that be one of your beehives. So that's it for Michael Moore. There are a lot of questions today. Question number 12. At what temp will swarms start? This is northeastern Wisconsin. And must the victim of weather modification, northeast Wisconsin must be the victim of weather modification, as we don't have any temps forecast above 65 for the next 10 days. Last year I caught my first swarm on Memorial Day. Okay, this is from Craigo for DDS. So it's all relevant. Your bees are just waiting for a clear day when the sun is shining to head out. And they're not showing a lot of common sense this year. I was going to help my sister-in-law. She lost her internet. Can you imagine? And it was 7 at night, and going down the driveway, and I look over into my lower meadow, which is where we grow all of our pollinator plants, and there was a big black clump in the middle of this field. And I go to look at that because I just can't believe that would be a swarm of bees. And it was. They probably came from me somewhere. Anyway, they were on a honeysuckle bush, shrub, tree, whatever, and on the ground because they bent it over and there were so many bees. So instead of going to help her with her, so that she could update her social media and things like that, I went and collected those bees. But what was interesting about that is the conditions were not good for swarming. So sometimes they just decide to go. If it happens between 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon, and you've had really cold nights, which we've had here, and that break is only in the 50s but sunny, you're at risk of a swarm. Now, of course, when the temps get even higher than that, the risk increases. So it's kind of like some bees, they're just full. The colony's full. They just have to go. They have to reproduce. They're done. Because remember, it's nice when you get a warm spell after a storm. So the saying I often cite is, when it's warm after a storm, expect a swarm. But keep in mind the triggers for swarming. If they've built queen cells inside the hive, it's a disaster if they emerge from those cells while the original queen is still in the hive. This pushes them to fly out on less than optimum days and at a less than optimum time of the day. So sure, they're at risk. The chance of that colony making it, with it dropping into the 30s, is not good at all. Combined with rain, they're just, plus they're on the ground. Skunks can come by and just have a feast. So they will fly out in marginal days. But optimum days, 60s or better, sunny, low winds, they'll go. So they have to, because that queen needs to survive. And I don't know overall if that impacts the number of bees that will depart the colony. In other words, if they're flying out against bad weather or something like that, do fewer bees leave or go with them? I would suspect that if they're flying out and it rains right afterwards, it impacts their ability to follow one another's pheromone to the cluster and things like that. So there are bees that will fly out, form that intermediate cluster on their way to some destination that they don't even have selected yet in a lot of cases, and they will just die there in a cluster on the ground. You can just find them dead. So they are at risk. But there's no absolute key. There is a book I would like to recommend to everyone listening right now. The author is Steve Rapaski, and the book is called Swarm Essentials. It's one of those small books. It's a paperback. It doesn't look like there would be a lot in it, but it is information dense. And it's useful information. It's very practical information. So I believe it comes from Wasp Press. And I highly recommend that backyard beekeepers get that book, Swarm Essentials. Now you can ask for the Frederick Dunn discount. There won't be one, but it's fun to ask anyway. And it just occurred to me that that book has parameters in it, just like what we're talking about. Best time of day, best season, indications for a swarm, how to manage it, how to prevent it. Good stuff. Steve Rapaski. Okay, question number 13. This is from Sergio. You talked about 2 mated queens. This is talking about a swarm that combined. How do you think that came to be? Swarms from 2 different hives that came together on the same branch? Thank you, Sergio from Portugal. So anyway, here's the thing. Because I did that swarm, which by the way, thank you for those of you who are watching that video because it has more than 50 views. And swarm in a bucket. So that was the first swarm I collected this year. And it was a really large swarm. And I did prime the branch on that tree with Swarm Commander. No big surprise. I mention it all the time. So, and then when I got them together in the big bucket, of course, they wouldn't all go in a hive. You may have had this happen before. Now, I get a lot of pushback on my methods because they seem like time wasting. It seems like Fred just wastes time, stares at bees, getting out of work, whatever he's doing. But the thing of it is, unless you set the bucket outside the hive and let the bees walk into the hive, you don't know what you have. If you, because I get the comments, open the lid, dump them in, be done with it, go on. Okay, no, first of all, it's not what I do. I'm a patient beekeeper. I have to stare at things. It's necessary. It's necessary for my health, I'm pretty sure. So I'm going to lean it there against the landing board, and I'm going to watch the bees go in. Now, it looks great. Oh, the bees are going in. Everything's fantastic. And then you realize they stopped going in. There are bees there. They're fanning their nasonofs at the entrance. What's up with the bees in the bucket? And what happened in this case was the swarm was equally divided. It's easy to figure out that you've got other queens, but they're just not mated when you see little clusters of bees on different parts of a branch and things like that. But you've got a big main cluster. A mated queen is in the main cluster. But this one was kind of 50-50. So what happened is, when it's warm after a storm, expect a swarm. Several colonies had the same idea at the same time, and they went into the air. And what did they do? They clombed onto the exact same branch together. And when I see that I can get the battle of the pheromones going, the queen mandibular pheromone, because keep in mind, the colony is full of bees that all know their own queen scent, and that's what keeps them together. So when they divide up, I have another queen. So then when they wouldn't go in, instead of forcing them in, which being a big beekeeper I can do, I can just open the lid, say I'm through with this, dump them in and make them sort out their queen situation, or set up another hive, which I did, take the bees to that hive, set them in front, and then you would have thought all of a sudden they woke up, and then now they're all going in. Why? Because now they have a space that's not occupied by a queen who has competing pheromones with their queen. And when you get an unmated queen in there, half the time they'll leave her in the bucket and nobody cares. Or she'll walk out and be in the grass somewhere, or out on the side of the hive by herself, or there'll be 20 bees on that queen. That's an unmated queen, and she's not competing very well pheromone-wise with the other queens that are in the swarm. This is why I like putting bees in a bucket, putting a queen excluder on top of the bucket, and seeing what they do. If there's another queen still in the tree or something, a bunch of them will join that. In fact, the bucket will empty if I didn't get a queen in the bucket. Or if it's an unmated queen, they'll ditch her like she doesn't even exist, like she doesn't matter, because they don't guarantee it. But that's it. 2 distinct colonies, 2 separate hives had swarms joined together on the same branch. That's what happened. It's pretty cool. The bucket method. Question number 14. Talk about methods. By the way, this was a lot of fun. What do you think I'm going to talk about? How to collect swarms. And if, by the way, I hope somebody listening knows who this was. At the North American Honeybee Expo, I gave a presentation there. There were more than 50 people in the audience. And at the end of my presentation, people come up to say hello, and I really appreciated that. One gentleman, an older gentleman, whose name I did not get, came up in a wheelchair, and he told me, when it comes to swarms, get a bowler, which is, the old derby hat, hang it in a tree, and you'll get swarms in that. So it took me a while to get around to that, but that's what I did, and the video is on my channel, which is Frederick Dunn. I hope you'll go and look at it because I surprised myself on it. I got a really good quality bowler hat, which, they were fashionable like 1900. A lot of interesting facts about the bowler, like it was supposed to be this new hat that was aerodynamic, like you could stick your hat out of a moving train and have your hat not blow off your head and stuff like that. Anyway, I hung it up, less than an hour, it had a swarm on it. Okay, so we did a video about that. So this is what this question is about, and it comes from 21st B. It says, do you think the collection on the hat was most likely due to it being a large enough dangling surface with grip for the swarm to collect on, the dark depression of the hat mimicking a tree hollow with texture to grip on easily like a tree, or lure put in a known prime location? I know there's no way to know with this one, but best guess from observing them. So here's the thing. And I have more hats coming, by the way. We're going to have competing bowler slant derby style hats hanging from the same tree, because it works and it was fun. Now that hat, by the way, is 100% woolen, so they're made out of wool. I bought it from eBay. It was a used hat. I'm buying another used hat that I just won the auction on. Got it for a bargain. It's actually a very nice bowler hat that brand new sells for almost $300, and I got it for $22 on eBay, used. And so when it gets there, I'm going to hang that one out there too. Then we're going to see if the swarms prefer one over the other, because, as I pointed out in the video, I did spritz it a little bit with Swarm Commander. Now, that draws more bees to the bowler, but listen, also the branches adjacent to that were spritzed with Swarm Commander also. So, and even my wife came home yesterday and said, "You've got a swarm." And I said, "No, that's my bowler hat that's hanging out there, just in case." So it even fools people from a distance. So here's what I'm doing. The bees went all over it, and because it's woolen, they can hook their little feet in it. And the people that say, just take the hat, shake them out of it. Have you shaken anything off of a woolen surface before? They cling to it like Velcro. So it is a problem. It's not super smooth to do, but the novelty aspect is worth its weight in gold. It is fun to take some person's cherished hat from who knows when, hang it from a tree, and have bees join it. Remember that your bees are not high resolution visually. They see objects, they see contrast. You're not going to get a greater contrast than having a black bowler hanging from a tree branch. And so when they're on the wing and they're looking for something to land on, in their mind, they must look at that black, round thing hanging on a tree branch and associate that with a cluster of bees. And off they go and they join it. That's what I think is happening. Because the other thing I want people to notice is they collected on the bowler. They didn't go up the string that was connecting it to the branch and also spread onto the branch. Where if you have, for example, a bunch of bees that get onto a branch that they're attracted to, they generally involve a couple of branches together. They don't just like tightly stick to the one thing. So they really stayed on the bowler. And then you have to think about the shape of it. It's like a bowl. And I don't know if it's called bowler. Maybe it is called a bowler because it looks like a bowl. I don't know. But anyway, the inside of the hat, once they got in there, and I can only suspect that the queen is in there because that's the most sheltered space. Do you know how warm that had to feel? I mean, I don't think they were in any hurry to get out of it. I had a very hard time getting them out of that hat. I think they wanted to live there. But it worked really well. And it was worth all the time it took me to get them into the hive. So, a good gripping surface, smelled right. Now we're going to have competing hats. So we're going to see what happens. We're going to see if the bees can pick out that one is more important than the other. Did you know, just because you need to, that the bowler was like the first hard hat that people wore? That they used to like seal them up with something, and it actually made the bowler hat kind of tough. And it was one of the things that wealthy people wore them and workers on railroads wore them. So it was like the first known hard hat that would protect your head. I thought there's a lot of interesting history with these weird hats and the fact that we can use them as beekeepers. But back to the guy in the wheelchair. If you were at the North American Honeybee Expo and you have any idea who that was, please tell me who it was. Please go to thewaytobee.org, click on the contact page and let me know who that old gentleman was, because I want him to know that it worked, that did not land on deaf ears, and that it was fantastic. But all these things play. Yes, prime location. It's a tree that I frequently get bees bivouacking. So we're in the fluff section now. We already talked about, oh, by the way, hantavirus is in the news. And I want you to go to my interview page, which is on, you can just Google Frederick Dunn interviews. But if you go to my page on thewaytobee.org and you click on the page marked interviews you can watch, I spoke with a small mammal biologist about the risks of hantavirus. So if you don't know what we're talking about, there was a cruise liner where people got sick, and it's the strain that will go from human to human. 40% mortality. That's high. So here's the thing. You don't have to be alarmed if you're in the Northeast, because this does not happen up here very often, if at all. But I would like you to watch that interview, and here's why. Beekeepers frequently encounter in bee equipment that's stored. They encounter this in hives that died out during winter. You'll often have a mouse nest in it. During that interview, we talk about the best practices for cleaning that out without introducing that material into your respiratory system, which you do not want to do. It is very potentially serious stuff, so I want you to feel safe. And so please listen to that interview with a small mammal biologist about what to do when you have to clean out, a mouse nest from your hive or from your tractor or your car engine. Wherever you encounter it, don't breathe that stuff in. It's all bad. So the other thing is swarms. I already talked about the Nucleus Hive, the miracle hive that blew apart, still doing great, and that's what I did my thing. Also, for those of you who might be anywhere near the Erie Zoo tomorrow, which is Saturday, the whole zoo is open, and I'm going to be in the children's zoo part of it, which years ago when the children's zoo was first put up, I did a lot of the artwork in there. But I'm bringing live bees with me, talked about the split, we have the observation hive, and so I will be in the children's zoo tomorrow. And if you're in the area, you want to pop over, bring me a cappuccino or something, I wouldn't hate you. And then that'll be it. We talked about best days ahead. Don't forget, Mother's Day, Sunday, don't blow it. Do not forget Mother's Day. And the last thing before we close out on this Friday is Jeff Horchoff did a video yesterday, I believe, and he talked about his YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know, Jeff Horchoff, Mr. Ed, is a YouTuber. He had 158,000 subscribers, he said, and someone stole his channel. So here we are 3 weeks in, and he did not get it back yet. But the good news is he finally got back his Google account. And so he is going to get all of his videos back, all that stuff. And so you will be able to get right back on board with Mr. Ed, the beekeeper. And so I think the channel was called Jeff Horchoff Bees. So you'll be able to do that. The good news is it's not live yet, but when it is, I'll put a link to it in my social post on my page so that others can share it and know that he's back in business, and you can go and show your support to somebody that momentarily lost everything because of a scammer. Can you believe it? So I want to thank you for watching. I hope that you have a fantastic weekend ahead, and that you're going to get ahead of your swarms. You're going to manage everything perfectly, and that your bees will not sting people that they should not be stinging. I'm Frederick Dunn, and this has been The Way to Bee.